Hello, I'm Roy Richardson, and this is the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Welcome back to the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Roy Richardson, with my insightful co-host and wingman, Sean Murphy. Sean, another week, another episode. Great to have you here.
Well, thanks, Roy. Great to be back. Looking forward to this opportunity with one of our colleagues. So let's get to it.
Yeah, Sean, today's conversation sits right at the intersection of leadership and clarity, and specifically what happens when talented leaders have everything it takes to win, but can't get quite everyone moving in the same direction. Our guest is none other than our colleague, Joe Forgét, founder and CEO of Igniting Momentum, an executive coaching and growth advisory firm helping founders and leadership teams create alignment, build strength, and gain clarity around where they're headed and how to get there. Joe brings an impressive 35 years of real-world experience across marketing, sales, operations, finance, and entrepreneurship, having served in roles as president, COO, and business owner before stepping fully into the coaching and advisory work he does today. He created the Ignition Framework as a practical methodology for navigating growth, transition, succession, and change, and his core belief is as simple as it's powerful. Business grow when people grow. But before we get into it, a quick word from our sponsor, Aurora Infotech, your partner for IT, cybersecurity, and technology leadership. When your systems are protected and running right, your team can focus on what they do best. Learn more at aurora-infotech.com. Joe, great to have you here with us.
Hey, Roy, thank you for having me on here today. Great to be here.
Roy, when I met Joe about a year ago, the only issue that I had with Joe is he was trying to claim that Syracuse Orangeman was a rival of the University of Miami.
I think that was back when we were both
wearing leather helmets.
That minor league called the Big East, right?
I believe we're talking about those that day and age. Yes.
Well, Joe, like Roy said, welcome. Leaders who are building something that truly lasts are going to feel this one, I believe. When we sat down and talked about having you on, I thought that that this was going to be a really good one. So let's get into it. Let's start somewhere fun before the actual work that we're going to get into. You've been on a daily running streak since May 1st of 2020. That's not a streak. That's basically a religion at this point. What started it, and what has showing up every single day taught you about yourself?
Well, it started, we were kind of in that lockdown period, and I just, I went out and I was running. I ran one day. I ran all the time back there, and it just wasn't every day. And I was like, let me see if I can do a week. And then a week became a month, and a month became 2 months, 2 months became 6 months, and here we are. So it hasn't always been easy. I broke my arm a couple of years ago, and the first thing I asked the orthopedic was, "Can I still run?" She said, "As long as you don't fall." And so right. I would be out there running with my arm in a cast and a sling, running past people, and probably look like a total freak. But it's just become part of who I am, running daily.
When I heard that and read that, I was like, very, very cool. Does it feel like a burden, or does it help you, keep everything else on track?
I think, there's been times that I haven't wanted to go do it. Honestly, right. Today I ran at noon. So it's not the optimal time in Florida in June. But, I kind of look at it as if I didn't, I'd regret it. So I also look at it as if I didn't run today and I stopped the streak, I don't know if I'd run for a week or a month. It's easy to say I'm not going to go out and do it. Not every day is as good of a run or as fun of a run, if you will. But, it makes me do things that are, I'll say, not fun and still need to get done. And so I'm thinner for it. So that's good.
Right.
allows me to eat what I want when I want, I guess. I don't know, but
You're gonna burn it off.
it's
You're gonna burn it
it's
off.
become part of who I am at this point. So yeah, but,
So I'm curious. I know, I love to walk and just, go on really extended walks and get into really deep thoughts and do a lot of problem solving while I'm out there. And I'm curious with your running. Is that where a lot of your best thinking happens? Some people do their clearest work at a desk. It sounds like you do yours on the road.
yeah, it's a longer run, and I mean, after you get out there for a couple of miles, your brain really does get pretty clear. But even in the first mile, it starts to align things going on. So I could have different things going on in my head, and I get out there and I think through them better, and it just helps me kind of create and flow them together. And so, yeah, definitely that, and in front of a whiteboard. So those are my two clearest thinking.
Very cool. You're an Eagle Scout. Very impressive. And you've stayed involved with Scouting America. For the people who don't know, tell us what that distinction involved, because not a lot of folks have that.
Well, yeah, growing up in scouting, there's a lot of things it brings to you. I mean, one, I kind of was in the woods probably every month camping. I grew up in upstate New York, so camping in the winter, sometimes it was in a cabin, sometimes it was actually, I remember one weekend we built an igloo out of snow and slept in that. So, but
Cool.
it really got me outdoors. But the path to Eagle Scout, that journey is really, it's advancement through achievement. And so, the one thing well, there's many things I think scouting does really well, but it's a plan in front of you. And they tell you, if you do these things, you have the opportunity to get the next rank, right? And so you might have to serve in that rank for a period of time, earn X amount of merit badges, sit in a leadership position, what have you. And then once you've met all the requirements, then you have a board of review, and and you actually get kind of like interviewed, like for a job or for a promotion. And so, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get to that next level. And so, the journey to Eagle Scout is really a life lesson of, if you put in the work, you more likely than not will, achieve the desired outcome. And, there's one piece of being an Eagle Scout, you put together a service project. And so it also kind of helps connect you with your community when you're doing something, whether it's, a project, in nature, or, my Eagle project was renovating the basement of the church that I grew up going to, and was part of the school that I went to for grade school. And we cleaned up the whole basement and waterproofed and painted the walls and built shelves and everything down there so that they could use the space more effectively. So,
Nice.
Very cool.
yeah, I mean, it just teaches you that, kind of that life of service, but also advancement. And, you get what you achieve, I guess, or you get what you earn, so.
Just another tool to help learn the importance of achievement. And I would imagine there's some leadership involved with that as well.
Definitely. There's different leadership positions within the troops. And so, my troop was an interesting story only because we had scoutmasters, but it was my father for a period of time, a friend's father for a period of time, and my buddy Jimmy and I were far more active in leading the troop than just a standard scout. Like we picked where we're going, what we're doing, everything. And so, yeah, a lot of leadership in early age, I guess.
All right. Well, listen, that's some of the beginning, but let's go back to the beginning, Roy.
Joe, you've spent over 35 years in leadership seats, president, COO, business owner, before stepping fully into coaching. That's a long runway. When did you know this was actually the work that you were supposed to be doing?
Well, I worked for an organization where we went through this program called Core Clarity, and it was kind of an interpretation of the Clifton Strengths Finder, your top 5 strengths. And my number one strength is developer, and ultimately learning a lot about myself, and it really connected dots for me that, one of my big passions throughout my career was helping others see things in themselves that they didn't necessarily see, and helping them advance themselves or make themselves better. And so a few years later, was working in another organization, and we had different coaches there. We had a EOS implementer for a couple of years that I worked with. He actually is the one that wrote the book, What the Heck is EOS, with Gino Wickman. His name was Tom Bauer. Great implementer, great coach. And then we switched to another coach, Rebecca Lockwood, and she was a Pinnacle guide at the time. She's still a business coach, and she's actually wrote a book called The Cohesive Couple. It's an operating framework for couples to stay aligned and healthy. Working with Rebecca was when I really it clicked for me. I was like, I love what she's doing. And one day in one of our sessions, I kind of stood up and was helping her get the people's thoughts out of their head onto the whiteboard. Just the way they were speaking, it was kind of internal speak. And so she was kind of struggling a little bit of understanding what they're saying. And I took the whiteboard markers and worked with her for, I don't know, better part of an hour. And I realized that, man, I love this, and so I figured I'd at some point end up going and doing it. And I reached out to her shortly thereafter and kind of inquired, what was her journey? How did she get there? And ultimately decided to make that leap a couple of years later. So
Excellent.
yeah.
And so having said that, I've heard you say several times that you waited a little bit longer. What was it that held you back from starting earlier? Was it doubt, identity, timing, or something else?
Probably a little fear, a little doubt. I'm a calculated risk taker, if you will, right? And where I was working at the time, I was I became our in-house coach, so I became the facilitator for our annuals, our quarterlies, and really took ownership over the development of the team, ran internal book clubs, and
Very cool.
just really the people that reported to me, I wanted to help them get closer and become better leaders, and just grow as individuals, but grow as a team. And I did that for a couple of years, and that was really I got paid for that client, my full-time role, but
Yeah.
that was really probably my first client, was working with the team I was on for the first couple of years there. And I finally made the decision, a couple of years ago to leave and go out on my own. And but yeah, probably more fear and self-doubt. And I mean, I think everybody goes through things where I love your thing on identity, but the big term in this space is imposter syndrome, right? So I
Yes.
think everybody struggles with the what ifs. And one day I just said, what if I didn't go do it? And that fear outweighed the fear of going and doing it. So pursue your passion.
So you, in your role today, you've often run into talented leaders that are struggling, perhaps not from a lack of effort, but from a lack of clarity and alignment. So in your capacity as, helping people see beyond what they believe they're capable of doing, what does that look like, when you walk into a leadership team that's stuck?
If I was to take a step back, I've worked with teams where the first time they were ever all in the same room physically together was that first day of our sessions. And so they'd been on Zoom calls together, but they'd never actually physically been together in the same room.
Right.
And, for you to achieve true teamwork and growth and business goals you're looking to achieve, ultimately the team has to be on the same page, rowing in the same direction. And so if a team was rowing crew and one person thinks they're trying to go left, the other person thinks they're trying to go right, the boat's not gonna, but they're more in that synchronicity, that harmony of their cadence of everything. And that's how a winning crew team is going to go out and row, right? And so it's kind of the same thing with business. It starts with getting the team on the same page, and usually that requires getting the team healthy, right? Aligned, trust each other, willing to debate and have healthy conflict, and talk through all the different avenues of where they could go. So
We're going to be doing a lot of that tomorrow afternoon, huh, Joe? Healthy debate. Hey, so you grew up in Albany. You've been here a couple of decades, and you've built something on your own. Looking back at that whole arc of progression, What's the thread that runs through all of it?
Interesting. Probably have to go back on that. When we're talking about scouting, the advancement leadership side of things. I mean, I went to an all-male military high school in Albany, so I feel like most of my life has been in some sort of advancement achievement type program. When I went to Syracuse, my student work study job led me into the Carrier Dome, where we lost to you guys when we couldn't get
Year
over
after
the goal
year
line
after
at the end
year
of it.
after
Yeah,
year.
I don't want to bring that up. Anyway,
I remember.
and so anyway,
Hey, I remember 77. I remember 77 to nothing at one point.
No. I told you guys the two worst ones. I drove from Syracuse to Miami to lose 49 to nothing and 52 to nothing. I've felt the pain. No, but anyway, my role there, I started as a runner with novelty operations, and within a year, I went from a runner to supervisor to assistant manager to getting promoted to manager of the team, so as a student in college, I was responsible for the whole storeroom inventory, 20 stands, 100 plus people, I originally went for electrical engineering, and I realized in that year of my life that my passion is not engineering. Not that I didn't have the academic potential. It just doesn't fuel me the same way. And so, I knew very early on that I just love working with people, and probably that advancement achievement based mindset has worked very well for me throughout my career. So, there's
it's amazing. You could actually be in, we are in the same circle. You could know people for quite a while. And it takes a podcast for you to realize that you both went to an all-male military school. You both went to a university that had orange in its colors, although one was the clear champion and winner. And you both went in as electrical engineers and decided after year one that it was not for you. So kudos there, But Joe, let's get to the
like y'all
heart
come
of
for
it.
money.
Yeah.
No, trust me, I have no business being at Syracuse, man.
High school.
My mother worked 3 jobs for me to go through college, and I left with a tremendous amount of student debt, and I owe my mother pretty much everything. So my mother and my father are big influences in my life. So, but I didn't even know what it meant, like private school. I didn't realize I could have gone to, a SUNY school for way less money. My mother just knew I felt comfortable at Syracuse, and it was transformational for me. So it was worth every penny, So
and if you didn't go there, I mean, we wouldn't really be talking about all those scores that we ran up on you guys over
right.
No fun right now.
No, we wouldn't. Talking football right now, right? Not lacrosse or basketball, right? Yeah, okay, just football. Gotcha.
So let's get to the heart of it here. What is your actual why? Not the company mission statement, but what drives Joe Forgét personally when you show up every day?
I think you guys know I have a tagline, a slogan for my business, but it's achieve the ROI on why. And my why is truly the transformation that happens for leaders in that session room, and watching a team go from individuals to being on the same page, but seeing like the body language, love and respect for each other, and that clarity, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And I want to see people win. And so part of winning is doing the work that we got to put in to make ourselves better. And that's the part of it that I just truly, truly love. So.
Awesome. Great segue, because I want to talk a little bit about what you're building today and how it actually works. And so for our listeners who haven't come across Igniting Momentum, give us the picture. What does the work look like? Who do you typically work with? And why does the 3-tier model, Spark Sessions, Ignition Tracks, Momentum Journeys, reflect something you believe about how teams actually build traction?
Well, let's see. The 3-tier model that you referenced, the Spark Sessions, a nice opportunity to work together just to help teams get clear in a short session. But ultimately, what I do, is I'm not going to say unique to me. It's my approach to creating clarity for leaders and leadership teams. It comes from, different things that I've done over the 35 years to get here. I've been involved in a lot of different things in my career. Probably after college, first 10 years, large publicly traded consumer electronics company. Then I ran my own, design firm. We did consumer packaging, did that for 12 years, and then went back to working for mid-sized businesses in that $30 to $100 million range for 10 years or so before starting Igniting Momentum. And so, there's three typical things that I encounter when speaking to a company, right? And there's founder-led teams that are heavily dependent day-to-day decision making on that owner or co-owners, but on one or two people make a lot of the decisions. And there's a team, but they're not, they're looking for direction versus being on the same page. Or and for that, I created a program called Ignite the Vision. There's business owners that are looking to grow and really operationalize their business, focused around building enterprise value. And often that conversation is driven by a desire to exit their business at some point in the next 3 to 5 years. And they understand that maybe the business is too complex, or they don't have the right team in place, or maybe they're still too heavily involved in the day-to-day decision making. And so the Ignite the Value program is focused around getting the team working together towards building that, but also getting the right team in place so that the owner could exit if the opportunity existed. And then there's the other big component that I come across is companies that have gone through mergers and acquisitions, and I've been a part of several mergers and acquisitions in my career, some better than others. And the Ignite the Venture program is really about the blending of teams to create a new vision, culture, strategy for this blended entity. And oftentimes in an acquisition, it's like, hey, we acquired you, so we're just going to make you, do it our way. And meanwhile, there's things that made the company unique, that the whole reason maybe they were your number two competitor. Maybe you feel they're synergistic in this thing. How do we get and build the best version of everything and take company A, company B, and make a, rock star company C? And so that's, those are kind of the three most common things that I come across with people. And so those are kind of those are the ignition tracks. And that's really, what does the first 90 to 120 days look like? And then we talked a little bit, you mentioned momentum journeys. And that's really just, in order to build momentum, we've got to get the flywheel going. We've got to get people working together. And it takes a bit of time to learn this cadence over time that people, you don't just go into 2 sessions and come out and everybody's fixed. That's not how it works. Right. So yeah, that's what we put together.
Okay, cool. So how's that? So is that the framework of Ignition, all that you just explained, or is there more to the framework? There's folks that are doing the EOS system and Pinnacle, and that's very, very popular is not the right word, but a lot of the leadership across the state are big into that. So tell me how that works in conjunction with that.
Yeah. So the Ignition framework, really, the flow of it's align, activate, accelerate, right? And it goes back to that you have to learn to walk before you can run kind of mindset, which is why when I talk about momentum journeys, right, in order to accelerate, there's a little bit of work that needs to get done. But, you mentioned EOS. Pinnacle is an offshoot of EOS, several years ago. Gino Wickman sold it to a private equity firm, and they shifted their model. And so a lot of coaches left EOS, and, implementers left, and so some of them created Pinnacle. There's a framework called System and Soul, which is actually the framework that connected with me the most. And was one of the big reasons that I took the leap to leave my role. But that one's really focused more around the soul component, that it takes people to run process. And I truly believe in that as well. But all of them are kind of scaling up: EOS, Pinnacle, System, and Soul. They're built off of, different, the Rockefeller habits, Jim Collins' Good to Great, Patrick Lencioni teachings around leadership, Stephen Covey's rocks concept. They're just pulling principles about these different business leaders over the course of time. And that's what EOS really is, taking, some of the best business concepts and pulling them together and creating okay, hey, if you don't have an operating system, if you implement this, you will perform better. And there is definitely truth to that statement. Is it a one size fits all situation? No, right? And so every business has different challenges that they're facing, and sometimes it doesn't feel right. So that's why I built what I built.
Excellent. Listen, I love what you're doing. I remember back in the early 2000s, I sat on the board of the Greater Orlando Regional Chamber. Jacob Stewart was running it back then, and Ray Gilly was running the EDC. And a lot of this leadership development was going on back then. And I took it over to ACG, and fast forward to, like 17, I went to the Leadership Institute. But listen, let's dig a little bit deeper on leadership itself.
Yeah. So Joe, your operating philosophy is purpose plus people plus process equals performance. Most leaders would say they believe on all four of those. So what's the one that actually gets underinvested in, and why does it keep getting skipped?
Well, I think the purpose, people, process equals performance. Of the three, I think purpose is probably the one that's skipped over the most. Going back to Simon Sinek, start with why. People can feel that there's power in purpose, right? And when you've identified why you do what you do as an organization, why it's important to the world, why it's important to your team, then everything else can begin to make sense. And I think, people is a big topic, because you hear right people, right seats, the Jim Collins concept. It's a big part of EOS and the frameworks, right? To have the right people having the right roles, you need that to be successful. And processes, right? If you're having a weekly meeting, if your agenda is this agenda or that agenda or this agenda, does it make the meeting? But maybe the meeting performs better because your meeting agenda follows the exact flow of like what your business needs, right? So the meeting agenda and the process doesn't shift things as much. Without that, I just look at it, I think people want systems, processes, they want to have the right people, and all of those are admirable. But how do you attract the right people?
Right.
Clarity of why you do what you do and the purpose behind the business. And now more than ever, Gen Z wants to understand why. How are we going to change the world? What's the impact? Why would I come work for you? Right? I've heard business leaders say it's the audacity. They're interviewing me. Honestly, just because I was Gen X and I would have taken any paycheck to do anything, right? Because that's how I was raised. But they do. And so the more clarity of purpose, the more people can rally behind what you're doing and feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what people want, right? And so, yeah, purpose for sure.
So what you work with founders and leaders who are often the ceilings of their own businesses, where the company can only grow as fast as the business owner or the business leader can let it grow. How do you help someone recognize what the shift actually look like to allow them to grow the business?
Well, I think, it's not always that they are the roadblock or the barrier, for sure.
Right.
Or the ceiling, as you put it. But I think, people there's a book called Positive Intelligence. It talks about your judge and saboteurs, and we all have saboteurs, right? At the end of the day, they were defense mechanisms that helped us, get through our childhoods. And as adults,
Sure.
they kind of get in our way, right? And so, whether you're a stickler or a controller or a pleaser, if you're a stickler, it's my way or the highway. My way is the best way, right? Well, it's really hard to expect somebody to do something your way every time. You can create processes, you want them to follow it. They're probably not going to do it exactly that way. A controller, I've worked with CEOs that I don't understand. We empower them to lead. I don't understand why they come to me for every answer, and it's, okay, but you may not want to be a micromanager, but because of your controller saboteur, you have this need to know what everybody's doing. And so that's kind of the definition of micromanagement. Sean, what did you do today? Right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, how did you get that done? What steps did you take? Right? I mean, that's kind of micromanagement, right? And then a pleaser, if you want everybody to like you, that's a really hard thing to hold people accountable, right? And so, and to know that we have these, it doesn't make us bad, right? They work for us and they work against us. And identifying that we just have these tendencies allows us to then say, okay, I feel that coming on, shift my brain and my thoughts over to, okay, hey, that's just my need for, I want somebody to do it my way. Right. And I think, and this got to me earlier in my career, Stickler was definitely one of my saboteurs. And, there's allowing people to do it their way. If they fail, you can't really point out to them, but if you had followed my way, it would have worked, right? It doesn't help in the conversation. And so, I had to learn, hey, look, this is when I need you to do it my way versus, or the right way, right? Versus we're after the desired outcome, right? And so if we give you 30, 60, 90-day milestones and clear expectations and you get that done, then you know what I mean? Then do I care if you weaved and I would have went straight and maybe a little more right? I mean, who cares? We hit the desired outcome, right? And we're not clones of each other. So it's really understanding, but a lot of times that shift is just in the sessions themselves, right? These offsite sessions with the team. I'm always doing things to bring the team closer together. And so, regardless of the exercise, typically it's to create vulnerability-based trust, right? It's for us to get to know each other at a deeper level so that people feel more comfortable debating topics. And one of the reasons that, a third-party coach or facilitator provides so much value for company strategic planning sessions is because it puts the leaders all on the same plane for a day, right? You might be my boss every day, but in this room today, we all have an equal input into the conversation. And a good facilitator is going to see, Sean has something to say and he might not agree with Roy, but I can tell he's not saying it. So how am I going to tactfully say, Sean, do you agree with that statement? Or Sean, do you have something you'd want to add to that? And like pull it out of them, because if they just go with the flow and they just agree to say yes, there's not alignment. That's false alignment, right? And so just saying yes because you feel like you have to is not actually alignment. So
and I can imagine those sessions probably touches a lot on culture, the establishment of culture, because once you have people who, like you say, are on the same airplane and realizing that there's no particular pecking order here because we're all breathing the same oxygen today, right? And it gives, and people start trusting each other, and that naturally leads into that formation, or at least the foundational aspects of establishing a culture within that organization where people start trusting each other and start really, going to bat for each other. But I want to shift gears real quickly here. Let's talk about the hard seasons.
Yeah, you've been honest that owning and leading businesses has had moments where the weight of it felt overwhelming, right? The people, the payroll, the performance, the uncertainty. What did you do in those moments? And what did you learn about it yourself?
Which decade? No, I'm just kidding. I cried myself to sleep in the corner, but it's fine. No, I've been through a lot of different scenarios in my career, and whether intentionally or unintentionally, I handled things differently at different times and had different outcomes. And so it's, I like to say, if I knew then what I know now, things might have been different. I mentioned I owned a design firm, and one thing that we shifted gears on was we left our niche. We left what made us unique, what made us special, thinking it would add more revenue. And the reality is it was the beginning of a downturn that didn't need to happen. Right. And so that's one thing I definitely work on with people is, what's your swim lane? What truly makes you unique, and what is the we talked about purpose, but what is the super fuel of your business, right? That makes your business unique, is in the lane you love to work in, and fuels your purpose. And don't stray from that, because entrepreneurs love to chase shiny objects. Love to chase shiny
Yes, we
objects.
do.
Can't
Right,
speak,
right.
but and so it's like, but if we do this, we can make an extra 50 grand. Okay, but at the detriment of what over here? And that's I've seen it a lot in my career. Chasing something to make a little extra money costs you way more in sales of your core business when you get out of that focus. So,
And yet, so true on chasing the shiny objects. But as I would say, as you mature through the entrepreneurship process, you start realizing the things you shouldn't be chasing versus the ones you really should be focusing on. I want to shift a little bit to your principle and how you operate. And your principle is that momentum doesn't always come from breakthroughs. Sometimes it comes from doing the next disciplined thing when things are hard. Where did you first understand that, and what did it change for you?
great question. When I first, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but I went through a tough period with my business back then. And I mentioned we shifted gears from what made us unique. And then that, I had a business partner decide he wanted to leave. And then a few years later, I had another business partner, the one that I'd worked with every day for 18 years. He wanted to leave. He's actually, we were just texting yesterday, so we're still on really good terms. But he actually left to go be a teacher and a head wrestling coach, and he's really found his purpose and enjoys what he does. Super talented designer, unbelievably talented, creative guy, but he's fueled his passion for the last 10, 11 years doing that. And so the focusing on what's next, I think when things are really tough, and I've had different scenarios in my career when working inside a company, that when we take on too much and things start to feel heavy, the job of a leader is to really, to whether it's they personally take a step back and create clarity, or they bring the team together to create clarity, to get what are the priorities, because we can't do everything with the scenario we've got going on. So what are the things we need to be doing to get us out of this rut, or to get us where we want to go? And I worked with a gentleman, funny guy, really brilliant technology guy. And he would always say, we always try and boil the ocean. And it's really, when you try and do too much, it's hard for people to follow. Right. And so if you want your team, as a leader, it's how do we break it down? And you see football coaches, and we were talking football earlier, but a lot of times when a football coach comes in, they say the team's just on discipline, and they're going to break it down to the basics, the blocking and tackling, right? And that's literally like, you have to simplify the playbook to get everybody working together before you can start to add things in. It's the same thing in business. And so that's really just, how do you get aligned on I'll say the most important things that we need to do today, this week, this month, so that we can get ourselves back into that good, healthy pace.
So you spent years gaining real operating experience, right? Then at some point you realize you'd probably waited longer than you needed to give yourself permission to fully step into your entrepreneurial self. What does that cost someone to wait?
I think obviously it was a cost in time. Getting started is the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, next best time today. So if you're noodling on an idea and you've got a plan and you think you want to do it, probably, sooner than later, but it costs you time. And at the same time, you have to be ready. Right. And that you hear people say, we want to have kids, we're going to wait till we're ready. We want to buy a house, but when the time is right. Is there ever the right time? But there are certainly the wrong times. I mean, if you're going to get into something and that you have to have the runway of capital to cover 6 months, a year, 2 years of your personal life before the business is going to start to generate profit to actually contribute to you, and you don't have that access to capital, probably the wrong time to get started, and maybe start socking it away so you can do it when you can make that flip. But for me, it was definitely, it really was fear and questioning myself, right? And I think if you have a good plan and you know you're going to be good at it, and people are telling you you're going to be good at it, just listen to them and take the leap for sure.
You also listed Extreme Ownership as a book that's deeply shaped you. Radical ownership sounds clean in theory, but what does it actually look like inside a leadership team that's stuck in blame culture? How do you move that needle?
Well, Extreme Ownership is a great book. It's written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, two former Navy SEALs, and they do business consulting now. But the book's a great book. It's the audio book. I mean, literally, they have things going on in Afghanistan in the background. It's in Iraq. It's interesting to listen to the book. But the biggest premise and takeaway, though, is the term commander's intent, right? When you're going into a mission, everybody going into the mission understands what winning looks like. They all have different roles in that process. They all sit in different seats, but they understand why they're doing what they're doing and what does mission success look like. And so from a business perspective, when you've broken things down into this is why we're doing it, right? And this is what it looks like, then everybody's making good strategic decisions daily because they understand what they're trying to achieve together. And then if, let's just say, obviously, if you're in their situation as a Navy SEAL or in the military, if you're in a battle and somebody's wounded or killed, and that was your leader, somebody else has to step in and lead. Like the mission doesn't just end, right? So like it can't just rest on the leader's head of like everything that needs to get done. Everyone needs to understand it. They need to know their role in it. They need to know, if so-and-so is not there, who steps in, or do I, you know what I mean? And it really translates well to business. It's an interesting read. And I played, there's a clip from Saving Private Ryan where talk about complaining up, so it's a great scene for Private Ryan, but it's probably like a minute-long clip. And I play it in sessions sometimes if you kind of hear that people are complaining to each other, or the team they lead, they're kind of complaining about other people to that team. Like you can't as a leader, right? As a leader, you're neutral. You don't get to chime in, right? The coach doesn't get to commiserate with the players, right? It's their job to change that. And so just great lessons on leadership, like for me. So
great stuff. And we've been talking about the hard work of clarity, ownership, and doing disciplined things. And right now, there's a tool that's promising to do a lot of that work for you. And of course, I'm talking about AI or artificial intelligence, the buzzword that's everywhere. It's in the boardroom, it's in the coaching conversations, it's in the strategy deck. From where you sit, where does it genuinely create value for a leadership team? And where does it risk giving them the feeling of progress without the substance of it?
I think AI it's everywhere. That's the conversation we hear about every day. I think there's different schools of thought, right? If you ask a lot of CEOs of what was the ROI from what they did in 2025 with AI, many of them would say they invested a lot of money and got very little in return. And a lot of that is not going into something with a plan or a strategy and an expectation and how you're going to measure success to begin with, right? But for people that say, hey, I'm going to use AI to replace my team, well, that's in some situations you can, right? But most businesses can't replace all the humans in the organization. They can streamline processes. They can maybe use AI to automate different things, right? An AI chatbot can only take you so far before it hands you off to a human, right? Even the ones speaking to them.
It's not coming to fix that broken pipe in your
well, it's definitely not going to do that. Yeah. But when you look at it as a force multiplier versus, how can I take my team and make them more productive versus how do I replace everybody? And then I think as a leader, you also have to be very clear with your team of how we're going to use AI from a perspective of, hey, if you're communicating with them that we're bringing this in to make ourselves more efficient so that we can be faster and nimbler, but it's not here to replace you, then you're going to put people at ease. And,
Right.
when people are fearful for their job, when they're fearful of change, it's a leader's job to give them comfort, right? And I think for most business leaders, you can't, we talked about boiling the ocean earlier. You can't just say, we're going to throw it everywhere in the organization and expect great outcomes. I mean, you have to have a plan, right? Otherwise, Roy, with what you do, obviously, data security, governance, what is that? I mean, you open yourself up to so much liability by just throwing it into yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
You're right. You're right. We haven't scratched the surface on it yet, and I think you're absolutely right there in the sense that companies that go into this and leadership teams that go into this and say, hey, we're going to use AI as a technology to make our company better and make our workforce work smarter and better. Will come out further ahead than those who are going into this from a replacement point of view. But let me ask you a question on that note. Is there a version of AI assisted leadership that actually makes your work more effective, or does it mostly create more noise for the leaders you work with?
I think, there's a lot of conversation in the coaching space of where can AI make coaching different, better. There's clients that are using AI to help them solve complex problems. I think that when you look at, can it replace the humans? I mean, maybe someday, but it's still about the prompting. An average prompt gets an average response that may or may not actually be accurate. And if you don't know the difference, like, the adage garbage in, garbage out. I mean,
I was just going to say that.
Right. Right.
I mean, and so like it can make, if you understand what you're talking about, it can make you 10 times, 100 times more productive, right? But you still have to understand it. So like what I do, and we're talking about leadership alignment and getting teams healthy and that sort of thing. If you don't see the gaps, if you don't see the blind spots, AI is not going to point it out to you. So you still need humans to help you come down that path and process. But it's not going to replace us yet. So
Right. Well, we've been saying that, a lot of leaders are using AI to generate frameworks, build plans, even draft their team communication and stuff like that. You spent 35 years learning that clarity isn't a document, that it's a conversation. What does AI get fundamentally wrong about how alignment actually happens inside a team?
well, I'm not sure it's AI gets it wrong. I mean, honestly, I think the path to clarity and alignment is including your team in the conversation. I had a mentor early in my career. He said the problem with most people is they think about the best case scenario. Maybe they think about a second scenario, but he said anything could happen, and you've got to think about the 3, 5, 10 different things that could happen, and then you have to weigh, are the really bad scenarios worth like it, if we do this but this happens, is it even worth going down this path? Because we always look at the people, it's human nature, we're going to look at the best case scenario.
Right.
And so from getting people on the same page, debating the topics, agreeing on why we're going to do what we're going to do, right? We could go left, we could go right, we can go straight. We talk through, the merit of those ideas, and we decide we're going to go straight. Okay, now we're going to leave the room and go straight together. And so AI might be able to give you what your options could be from what it understands, but there's probably a lot of stuff in the team's head that would make even that prompting, even if you were to use AI to help you get down this path. If it's me communicating with the AI, it's just one set of thinking, right? If the three of us were to talk through a topic and use AI to get to you guys see things differently than I do with different experience and with different purview inside the organization. And so I might not even know that if we did that, you'd break this over here. And Roy's like, wait a minute, if you did that, you'd put us all at risk and in jeopardy. Okay, well, then we're not going to do that, right? And so does AI know all those things? Right now it doesn't. So
So here's the question that I think a lot of leaders are wrestling with right now. And you kind of hinted on this earlier. And I don't necessarily want you to answer it now because I'm kind of planting the seed for the legacy segment that's coming up. But if AI can surface insights, build frameworks, and analyze team dynamics, what is the irreplaceable thing that a coach with real operating experience still brings to the table? And where do you become more valuable in a world where information is no longer scarce? So I wanted to plant that seed. Feel free to chime in, but I know we'll cover it. We'll cover it coming up.
I will. I'll wait till later, but I just wrote a note.
It's very interesting that we're having this conversation right now about what leadership actually requires in a world where AI is doing more and more. And it's literally the conversation that a community that the three of us are involved with, that we're gathering business leaders and owners together in August. The CEO Leadership Forums, we're hosting an event called Leading Beyond the Algorithm: What Great Leadership Looks Like in an AI-Driven World. And what I love about this is that it's not a tech conference or event. It's a leadership conversation. The premise is simple. The organizations that thrive won't just be the ones that adopt AI the fastest. They'll be the ones led by healthy, aligned teams that know how to combine innovation with judgment, culture, accountability, and human connection. Now, Joe, I said a lot there. That's basically your entire body of work, right?
Pretty much, yeah. No, I think it's interesting. It's going to be a great event, and one of the things we keep hearing about AI, and it's something that the word that comes to mind for me is lead, right? And it's one of these things where, as business leaders, we always want to improve performance, but this is a leadership opportunity for people, right? To guide their teams through it and create comfort and clarity versus fear and wonder, right? And we talk about change management. A lot of people say people hate to change, but it's not that they necessarily hate change. They don't understand why you're asking them to change. So the bigger fear is that with a lack of understanding or lack of context, some people just can't embrace change, right? And so when we talk about AI from a leadership perspective, this is hey, we're not going to do everything all at once. We're not going to replace it. We're going to look at the pockets that we can create the greatest impact. And the event, I truly believe, is going to be an outstanding take on that, right? Having different business leaders talk about how they're leading their teams through this, because, I have a daughter that's graduating in July from UNF, and she was talking about there's so much conversation within the student community of jobs and jobs that are going to exist, and it still takes good human prompting in most situations to even use AI for things. You can automate systems, but we haven't even been able to do that for years. Marketing automation platforms, you could automate workflows that made decision-based, logic-based decisions and would automate tasks. We've been doing that for 10, 15 years, right? 20 years. So that didn't replace humans, still needed humans to figure out what could the logic look like or should the logic look like. But I think it's going to be a great event. And that student fear, I think, our partnership with Valencia and bringing the students into the events and trying to make that connection between students and leaders, I think it's a topic that the students should want to come listen to as well, because there's so much question and fear of what it means for the future. And to stick our heads in the sand and say it's not going to change how things are done, it certainly is. But, if I hold up my cell phone, no one thought was it 2006 when the first iPhone came out? Like, no one expected a phone that you could surf the internet on to change the world as much as smartphones have. So AI is just doing that faster. So think about that change. That's 15 years or 18 years or whatever it's been since then. I guess 20 years, right? And But AI in 2 or 3 years has just it's the wild, wild west. And the problem is it's the wild, wild west.
I think we're really gonna have a great event, and if you've been wrestling with any of what Joe and Sean spoke about before in this segment as a business leader, this is the room to be in come August. And I know, Sean, you're going to mention somewhat about the details on that event, right?
Yeah. We'll talk about it at the end, but for right now, I'm gonna go in some quick hits, Joe. First thing that comes to mind when I ask the questions, books you've given away more than any other, and why?
Well, there's many books. I feel like I have a library of books around me, but Five Dysfunctions of the Team by Patrick Lencioni. And why? You cannot have alignment without conflict and without vulnerability-based trust. You will never actually have alignment. And so if you want results, getting a team healthy and aligned, and feel comfortable debating topics, right? You have to create the psychological safety for your team and actually say, great idea, and if we did this, it would be even better, or, terrible idea, you'll blow up everything we built over here. Just saying yes does not get you where you want to go.
Most overrated buzzword in the leadership and coaching space right now?
Scaling. It is a word you hear all day, every day. And I will simply say, you cannot scale a house of cards. And so, we talked a little bit about trying to automate everything at once with AI. It's like in general in business, right? If you've got breakdowns in processes in different departments, different systems, different workflows, you can't scale something that isn't scalable. And so people use the term loosely. Scaling is not growth. Scaling is systematic, process oriented, repeatable ability to grow. And there's a huge difference between rolling up our sleeves and growing and building a truly scalable entity. And so it's scaling for sure.
Favorite place to think clearly?
Running or a whiteboard. If I could have a running whiteboard, it would be great. But, I used to literally, I can't even drink out of a water bottle and run, so I'm not going to be on the whiteboard. That'd be bad. But I used to, because I run with headphones where it's got a microphone, and there were people I used to work with, and I'd be out running, and I'd go, oh man, that's how we could do that. Right. And I would literally call them. I remember this guy Lauren that I worked with, and he brilliant guy, and I called him and I'm out running. And we're talking through this thing, and he's like, are you running? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, how are you having a full-on conversation? I'm like, I don't know. We're just like out there talking through it. But like we solved how this whole automation thing worked in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, like while I was out running. So
that's fun.
Yeah,
very cool.
Clarity.
One habit that makes tomorrow easier if you do it today?
Creating clarity at the end of each day, really tying up loose ends that needed to get done, that you could get done, whether it's, I hate when people send emails at 8 or 9 o'clock. That's why the productivity tools have the ability to schedule it, but it doesn't mean you can't write the email, and schedule it to be sent at 9 a.m. But putting some of those things at rest so they don't sit in your mind, so that you can actually be present at home and rest at night, and then, kick off the day the next day, because you've already put today to bed and I've got a plan for tomorrow, and then I can go, tackle tomorrow. So
best piece of advice you've ever received, and give it to me in 10 or fewer words.
I have 2, and I think they're less than 10 words. Praise in public, coach in private, and some of the best decisions in my life were made for me.
Awesome. That's great. I like that. So let's slow things down for a moment. Joe, in our many conversations, you said that for you, work-life balance isn't quite the right frame. It's more about integration, running daily, protecting family time, staying physically strong. What does that actually look like in practice, and why does it matter so much to the work you do?
Well, I made a commitment to myself when launching my practice that I was going to stay focused on me and my health. And so I think also as an entrepreneur, you don't have standard work hours, right? So
Ain't
for
that the
me,
truth?
if if I block the morning to go to the gym, I want to go to the gym because working out gives me clarity, it gives me energy, and I feel good for the day. When I let things derail me and I don't get there, I know it. And years ago, I had a therapist said to me, he said, you're a top gun. You want to be the best at everything. He said, you've got to learn that when you're at work, be the best at work. When you're at home, be the best at home. When you're at home, don't be thinking about work. And when you're at work, don't be thinking about home. Now, that's not what everybody wants to hear from their partner or their spouse, that you're not thinking about home when you're at work. But if you're the type of person that's a high driver, find a way to be present in the moment of where you are. And that, for me, I just really try and they're integrated together because I'm always working. You know what I mean? Like my brain's always going on something. So,
And so you've mentioned that being the dad of your two daughters is one of the most important roles in your life. And I can relate with my kids. As someone building something for the long term, how has fatherhood shaped the way you think about legacy?
well, there's two people in this world whose opinions matter most to me, and that would be Sasha and Talia. But I posted something the other day about active listening. You know, it used to be my nature to kind of dive in and try and help them solve things, and we created some clarity around that when they were teenagers. Of, do you want me to, do you want me to hear you? Do you want me to help you, or do you want me to handle it? And I've used that language with them because if they just want me to listen, I'll listen. But you can also overreact as a parent, right? Well, it's the same when if you're a senior leader in an organization and somebody's coming to you and they're sharing a scenario and you blow up at them, they are never going to come back to you, the same way, right? You consume an awful lot of social capital if you erupt at somebody. If they tell you they did something and your body language says, man, I disapprove, you're eroding a lot of social capital because now they're going to come to you to ask you how to do things because they can tell you didn't like the way they did it, right? And so it's like, as a parent, that was something I really had to do. There were times that they would share things with me that I didn't like what I was hearing, but I didn't want to be judgmental. And you know what I mean? And because that's one of the biggest challenges, right? Like, to fail, it's the first attempt in learning. So, we can give them all the best guidance. At the end of the day, they're going to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, how we react is whether or not they come back and talk to us about it again, or if they go, never going back there. And so, I definitely do not always have a poker face. That is for sure. But I wear my emotions on my sleeve for the most part. But I have, with them, tried to give them the safe space to be themselves and to grow, and they know I'm here when they need me, and but I think it stems to leadership too, for sure.
So, if you had the opportunity to put together a dream board of advisors, anyone from any point in time, past or present, who would be on your board and why?
It's a great question. One of my favorite authors is Patrick Lencioni, so I feel like I just connect with his take on leadership for sure. Jim Collins, just so much great stuff from Jim Collins. We talked scouting earlier. Lord Baden-Powell, the founder, creator of scouting, I think would be a really interesting person to have on the board. Just somebody that had that much foresight in creating this youth program that would be such a big part of developing healthy, leading young people. Terry Francona, former manager of the Red Sox, because, man, he took a band of misfits. He had a couple of superstars and a bunch of, some of the guys had their best seasons under him. I remember Bill Miller had an unbelievable year at third base. He hit, way above his career batting average, just an outstanding year. Bellhorn, just a bunch of guys on the team that he found a way to blend a team for sure. You want to talk about a guy that knew how to play different personalities and speak to their different personalities, right? And then Bill Parcells, I mean, you tell I'm split between I'm a Red Sox fan and a Giants fan, so it's an interesting one. But I think, when you hear Hall of Famers talk about Bill Parcells, he might have been hard on them, but man, he had their best interest at heart, and he big influence there. And then I mentioned my mom earlier, but my dad actually, my dad was somebody I used to talk to about a lot of things, and he was a lifelong learner and really gave me the desire to dig into things. And he's the handiest person I've ever known. And unfortunately, he's not around anymore. But I learned a lot from him, so he'd be on it for sure.
That's an amazing board. One thing I would say, every guest that has come on the show has sort of outshone the previous guests with their boards, right? And you have a stellar board there, so kudos. Let's look forward a bit. 10 years from now, what does success look like for igniting momentum? Not just from a revenue or client count, but what does the work look like, and what does it mean for the leaders and the teams you've served?
Well, for me, I mentioned my why earlier is the transformation of leaders. So, I feel like the companies I work with, the teams I work with, I'm on their team. I get to know them at a personal level. One of my clients, one of the guys just had his second kid last week, and I look forward to seeing him in a couple of weeks for their quarterly. But, just you get to know them on a personal level, and I feel connected to their ups and downs, right? When things are going really well, I can feel a little bit of pride that, hey, I had a part of that, or I played a part in that. And when they go through tough times, I own it as if I was on the team. It's just, I want people to be successful. And so I don't really measure the success of igniting momentum beyond that. So the client count, the desire to work with more clients, it's always been the passion. I love to learn about different businesses. And so one of the things I loved about my marketing business was, learning so many different businesses. And so for me, this is the part of my career where I get to take what I learned and what I've developed over, 35 years and put it to work where I get to enjoy the next 10, 15 years and really know that I'm giving back to others by helping them become more productive, healthier teams. So.
Nice. So earlier, we planted a seed in the AI segment. The coaching and advisory space is crowding fast, and AI is changing what information and frameworks are accessible to anyone. Coming back to that, where does a human coach, someone with real operating experience, the 30-something plus years you just spoke about, actually matter more in that world and not less?
I think human connection can't really be replaced. If we think about social media, smartphones, texting, Snapchat, it's actually created, while people may say it gave us great communication tools, the human interaction, the human communication, many young people do struggle in that scenario. And so for me, from a coaching perspective, there's a human element to everything. Most of the business challenges are not black and white, right? They're very much gray area things. The facilitation, the coaching, the empathy, maybe AI will get to that point that it's empathetic and it can see the room and see the body language and make that, those same deterministic calls. But I think a good coach is like a therapist, right? I mean, there's many therapists that are qualified to do couples counseling or trauma counseling or whatever. But if you don't have a connection with that person and feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable and allow yourself to grow and to say, I don't have all the answers, I don't know everything. AI, I just don't know how that would replace that human element. That's the power of a good coach. It goes beyond the systems. It's the human element side of it.
You're so right on that. I mean, you see today where AI is being used, for example, even on calls to try and determine and guide people and how to respond in conversations, et cetera. So maybe you're right. Maybe in the future, it may contribute in one aspect or the other, but it's never going to have that real world experience and the coaching side, your 35 plus years of, spanning multiple different companies, seeing companies go from 0 to 100 plus, companies that failed, companies that thrived, and then of course the real world experience, right, and bringing that all from a coaching perspective. So, Joe, you've talked about giving yourself permission sooner. If you had fully stepped in 5 or 10 years earlier, what do you think that would have unlocked for you and for the people you serve?
I think one, I would have worked with 5 years more of different companies and people. But you know, I also look at the timing was when it was, and I wouldn't have had the experiences that I had there. So it's an interesting take on that one. Probably 2 or 3 years before I did was when I really probably should have made that leap, just because it was when I was really focused on that. And so what that would have brought would have been the things I learned in the first couple of years would have been a couple of years earlier, and I would be a little further along in helping people. But my path is my path, my journey is my journey, and I look forward to the next 10, 15, 20 years of working with people. So
it's the old saying of, if we had the experiences today, but at the age that we were back then, what a difference it would make, right? And what an advantage it would be for us, right? Back then, thinking
absolutely.
Probably thought we knew it all. So,
Right.
Oh, I remember in one of my classes in college, the professor said money's not a motivator, and everyone in the class laughed at him. And we were like, "What are you talking about? Money's a motivator. That's why we go to work." And he said, "No, like, you're going to learn money's not a motivator, and it's one motivator, but it's only one of many, right? Whether it's you want to be a part of something, you want the ability to grow. Motivation isn't financial compensation is only one form of compensation. And leaders, we have to really understand the people that we work with and connect with them. But yeah, I mean, I wish I knew what I know now then.
Amen. I think we could all probably say that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, it's good to feel the way I do with the insight that I have now.
Joe, first and foremost, before we let you go, for anyone listening who wants to continue this conversation or learn more about igniting momentum, where's the best place to find you?
Probably the best place to find me is online at ignitingmomentum.com. It's the company website. And I'm on LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn and search Joe Forgét, it's spelled like forget. And those are probably the two best places to find me online.
And on that note, Joe definitely wants to forget about those beatdowns that Miami put on Syracuse back in the
day.
Right. Man, we just keep circling back here.
Right.
But all jokes aside, Joe, thank you for sharing your journey with us and for sharing with our listeners what you do and how you help organizations. And what I keep coming back to is something you said early in our conversation, that most teams don't fail because of lack of effort. They fail from lack of alignment. That's a deceptively simple idea, and it carries a lot of weight because it means the work of leadership isn't just strategy and execution. It's creating the conditions where people can actually do their best work together. That's what you do, and it's a contribution that matters in ways that don't always show up on a balance sheet. We're grateful you spent time with us, Joe. Thank you, and thanks for all you do here for our community and our CEO leadership forums as well.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'd like to say, Joe, what stays with me isn't just what you know. It's the fact that you've lived it before as a leader yourself. You've been in those leadership seats, dealt with the hard calls, felt the weight of building something, and then chose to take all of that and help other people grow through it. That's not a coaching story. That's a leadership story. And I think a lot of people listening today are going to walk away thinking differently about clarity, alignment, permission, what it actually means for their journey. Thanks for sharing all of it with us today, Joe. I really appreciate it. And so with that being said, we talked earlier about an event that we're going to be a part of around the AI story. So that event's going to take place Tuesday, August the 25th. At 10,000 Legends Place in downtown Orlando. You can go to ceoleadershipforums.com's website, or you can go to the LinkedIn page. We're all big LinkedIn guys around here. It's from 4:30 to 6:30, and the speaker, we're finalizing a keynote speaker as we speak. So with that being said, we'd love for folks to come out and be a part of it and get some more knowledge around this whole AI thing. We know it's a buzzword, but we're actually trying to put it to practical work. And so with that being said, to our audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Until next time, stay curious, stay driven, and keep leading with purpose.
Hi, I'm Roy Richardson, host of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Are you a business owner or a leader of a successful business? If yes, we'd love to have you as a guest on our program. Our goal is simple. We provide a platform for leaders to share their experiences to benefit others. We want to hear your story, how you got started, the challenges you faced along the way, and your passion today. If this sounds like you know someone who fits these criteria, then be sure to get in touch with us by visiting our website linked in the episode description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification bell to be notified when our next episode goes live. Or, if you'd rather listen to us during your car rides, you can also follow us on your favorite audio channel using your podcatcher. Thanks again, and remember, keep crushing it.